Hi, this is a review of the Crown XTi 1002 power amp. I recently had to sell my Emotiva power amp because I needed money. So I decided I had to get an amp to replace it, and I had a kind of a limited budget, so I wanted an amp for under $500 that would be able to drive my speakers, which are 4-ohm speakers and a kind of a difficult load to drive. So I decided to go with this Crown XTi series amp. Now this is a professional amplifier, or some people would call it a DJ amplifier. And it's a little bit different than a standard home amp, but it does a very good job of driving my speakers, and it sounds really good. And I'd like to explain some of the features on it and explain a little bit about it. On the front here, we have the 2 level controls for each channel. We have the level meters on each side. We have a little LCD screen, and we have 3 buttons, and that's to adjust some different features on it, which I'll explain in a minute. Over here we have a power button on the right and a power LED. Now, in addition to being a normal amp, this amp also has some additional features. It has a subharmonic synthesizer. It has equalization. It has a built-in crossover, and it has delay, and it has a peak limiter. Now these are features primarily that would be used in a professional application by a DJ or for live sound. So I won't go into the specifics of them, but they are on the amp if you would need them. I'm primarily reviewing it as an amp for home theater, so that's what I'm going to concentrate on. This amp retails on Amazon for about $420, and it's 275 watts per channel into 8 ohms and 500 watts per channel into 4 ohms. Now, this is rated into 1000 hertz, whereas normal home equipment is rated from 20 to 20,000 hertz. So the actual power is a little bit less, and from what I heard, it's about 220 watts into 8 ohms, which is still, a pretty powerful amplifier. The professional amplifiers do have some additional things about them that I need to explain to you, and you're going to have to bear with me here. I'm going to have to just take a trip around my home here and go behind the amp and show you some other things. Okay, here we are at the back of the amp. Now what we have here is the power connection and the power cord. We have banana connectors where the speaker wires are connected. We also have speak-on connectors, which is a twist-on type of connector that's used by professionals and DJs. We have the fan. This amp has a fan, but it doesn't run all the time. It kicks in when it's needed. And so far this fan has not run under normal use. It's winter here where I am now, of course, so I keep it about 64 degrees in the house to save on fuel oil. So I've had this thing on all day watching TV and listening to music and so forth, and the fan has not yet come on. I know in summer under warmer conditions it will occasionally come on, but I'm not really too worried about that. Over here we have the inputs, and these are balanced inputs. If you're not familiar with balanced inputs, these are used by professional equipment. And the nice thing about balanced inputs and cables is it tends to negate any noise or hum that you would ordinarily pick up, like with RCA cables. So even if you're running a long run of cable, you're probably not going to pick up much noise or hum with these balanced cables, which is kind of nice. Now, one thing I have to point out about these professional amps is the input levels on them are different than home amps, whereas the specification for home equipment is minus 10 dB input. The specification for pro equipment is plus 4 dB. So if you're running a receiver, you're running like, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's my receiver right here, a Denon. I'm running my preamp outputs of the Denon, and then what you need to do is you need to get yourself a converter box, and that converts, I hope you can see it here if it's showing up, that converts the unbalanced consumer level signal into a balanced professional level signal. It has RCA inputs and it has balanced outputs. So that boosts the signal and converts it to a balanced signal, but it doesn't add any noise or distortion because the noise and distortion levels are actually lower than that of the amplifier itself, and the frequency response is actually as good or better than the amp. So it's not adding any noise or distortion, you're just converting the signal into a signal that can be used. And then it converts it into a balanced signal, and then you run your balanced signals, your balanced cables into your amplifier. Now, these boxes right here, I call it a bump box. And there's a lot of different names for them, and there's different manufacturers that make them. And they generally run for about $60. If you go on Amazon and you look for RCA to XLR converter, some will probably show up. But you really do need to use one of these, because if you try running, say, an RCA to XLR cable directly into the amp, you're going to have like really poor signal to noise ratio and a lot of noise, and you're not going to be able to drive the amp to its fullest potential. So you really need to use one of these converter boxes if you're going to get the full potential out of this amplifier. But like I say, they're about $60, so you're not looking at that much money. I have mine plugged into my switched outlet on my receiver so that it comes on when the receiver comes on. So, you know, I don't have to go and turn a switch in order to turn it on or whatever. So it's pretty convenient. There's the back of the amp again. Now this amp only weighs about 18 pounds, whereas conventional home amps or hi-fi amps are usually, of this power level, are usually quite big and heavy. You kind of have to bust your nuts to move them around. And what's nice about these types here is that you don't have to do that because they're relatively light and small. The sound of the amp, well, I find the sound of the amp to be very impressive. Very clean, detailed sound. Especially impressive is the bass response, because the Crown amps have a high damping factor. It's greater than 500, which means that that amplifier is maintaining control over the woofer in your speaker, so you get a real tight, accurate bass. I probably have never heard such good bass from an amp as I've heard from this Crown amp. There are very, very few amps I've heard that are able to control the woofer like this amp does. So if you're really into bass, real tight, accurate sounding bass, or if you plan to use one of these to drive a subwoofer, which you can do that, I do highly recommend this amp for that purpose. And this amp can be bridged to mono, and I believe it will put out 1,000 watts into 8 ohms mono, and I think it's 1,400 into 4. And this gives you a lot of power in a not very big package, so it's really a pretty nice amp for the money. I'll go back around to the other side for a few additional comments here. Well, to sum up, for about between $400 and $500, you have a real nice sounding, powerful, reliable amplifier, which has additional features on if you want to use them. It's a pretty nice looking amp. It's lightweight. The only disadvantage is it does have a fan in it that will occasionally kick in. If you're really worried about the fan noise, you can always get yourself some longer cables, and if possible, you can mount the amp in another room or a farther away location where you won't be bothered by the noise. But in a lot of circumstances, the fan won't run that much. If you have, like very efficient speakers, you're not going to have to turn it up that much. So I guess that's not too much of a worry. Overall, I rate this amp very highly. It sounds great, looks great. It comes from a very reputable manufacturer that's been making amps for maybe 50 or 60 years. So if you need a powerful amp to drive some difficult to drive speakers in a stereo or home theater, I highly recommend the Crown XTi series. I mean, they have the 1002, the 2002, 4002, and 6002 models, and each one is higher power from the 2 to the 6. If you want to audition this amp, these are usually able to be seen and listened to at pro audio places, stores that sell stuff for DJs and so forth. In my local area, there's a music store that has these, so I was able to audition them. And I think it'd really be a great amp for you. As usual, comment, rate, and subscribe. If you have any questions about this amplifier or this review, please be sure to ask them. And thanks for watching my review.